What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to the Bear Report YouTube channel. Usayd Koshul and Zack Pearson here. You can follow us on Twitter at Usayd Koshul and at Zack Pearson. That's ZACK_Pearson. The Bears hit the practice fields for the second consecutive day. We had a lot of action going on at Hallis Hall. If you thought Tuesday and Wednesday were busy, Thursday really seemed to be busier. Before we get into all the action, make sure you've dropped a thumbs up on this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel as well. Keep up with everything that's happening here at the Bear Report. We're providing some of the most comprehensive coverage of your Chicago Bears. Zach, how you doing today? I know you were on the ground at Hallis Hall today, so take us through just everything that happened.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Yeah, today was the first open practice for the fans. Obviously, Wednesday was the first overall practice, was just media. But yeah, I mean, to get right into it, the biggest storyline for today was we got out there and Teven Jenkins was not at practice, and he's been working with the second team at right tackle for the last 6 practices of OTAs in the offseason. And then the first practice on Wednesday, he was with the second team right tackle, and he also got reps at left tackle. So we go out there today, and a bunch of reporters noticed that he wasn't there. And kind of the thing to note is Adam Johns said that he saw Teven Jenkins in the parking lot before practice. And when we got out there, he just wasn't there. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting because you look at it, and I thought after watching Jenkins on Wednesday, the way they were using him, he was going to be their primary swing tackle. And that tells me he got demoted to the second team. And there is something with Larry Borum being the first one to get reps at right tackle with the first team. Riley Rafe and Braxton Jones were splitting tackles with splitting reps at the left tackle. So for me, it's like, okay, Jenkins is probably going to be your primary swing tackle, and now to see him not there, it's a little interesting. And here's the kicker of it all: Matt Eberflus is not talking every day after practice. He's going to talk every other day after practice, and he pretty much told the beat that if there was an injury or something was going on, he'd make his best effort to come in and talk to us. That didn't happen today with Teven Jenkins. He spoke on Wednesday. So he didn't speak today, so we have no clue what's going on. We'll know if Teven Jenkins at practice before Matt Eberflus speaks again tomorrow. So it's just kind of like one of those things where the Bears aren't doing Teven Jenkins any favors. We can't really report on things, and so he's either A, hurt, or B, something happened where maybe he just needed a mental checkout day where he just wasn't there. And, I don't know. But either way, this is outside of the offense of Justin Fields. This is the biggest storyline right now early on in training camp.
Yeah, you mentioned Teven Jenkins. Just my quick thoughts here. I mean, we have to, I think, turn the calendar back 365 days almost and just look at everything that happened where the Bears, he fell out of the first round last year in the 2021 NFL draft. The Bears traded a second-round pick as well as a third-round pick to trade up to 39th overall to grab him. He was labeled a top 20 player, and it's just been such a murky start because the previous regime mishandled his injury, and then all of a sudden surgery was a last resort when probably back surgery should have been a first resort. And now he's in a situation where he played 6 games last year, started 1 or 2 of them, but he just hasn't been able to kind of live up to that expectation. Now, 50% of you could attribute to the previous regime mishandling everything. The other 50% of it is that, the back injury, I think, is a legitimate concern here, especially because he's so young. So the Bears could be playing it safe, but the fact that he was kind of out there on Wednesday and not even present on the practice field today kind of makes you wonder what's going on. I know that the handful of times I've been up to Hallis Hall, what happens is when there's a couple of players that are injured, you usually see those guys working off to the side with the trainer or someone of the athletic staff. I don't think anyone saw that with Teven Jenkins today because he just wasn't out there. So it's certainly a major storyline to monitor. But just moving on from that, I mean, this was the first time that we had an opportunity since I believe it's mandatory minicamp in June. So it's been about 5 to 6 weeks that we got to hear from offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. And, Luke is certainly, I think, one of the most intriguing coaches on this staff because he's seen the Bears twice a year for the last couple of years, dating back to his time in Green Bay. He had an excellent comment about how Darnell Mooney's so versatile, can move kind of all over the place, and is ready to take a step forward. But really, I think what Luke's biggest talking point today was just all about how the offense isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm not. Go ahead. Play the clip.
Yeah, so here's a quick clip from Luke Getsy on the lack of execution.
No, I'm not. We're just getting started, right? We're just getting back at this thing. For me, it's the lack of execution that I'm focused on right now. That's what pisses me off more than anything is right now is getting that stuff taken care of and getting that out of there, and guys knowing what the heck to do, so then we can talk about stuff like that as you get going.
Yeah, and what he's pretty much talking about there is the false starts. It is nothing with like the quarterback play or anything like that. There was a lot of false starts and there was a lot of drop passes today. And, Getsy is pretty much saying right there that they got to get this right. I mean, they've had all off season with OTAs and off season, the mandatory mini camp and things like that. And when you come out, I counted, I think it was like 3 or 4 false starts that he had, that the Bears had, and that's pretty much what he's talking about. And it's, it's frustrating because this was the biggest negative from today. I mean, everything else was good. Obviously Teven Jenkins wasn't there. Lucas Patrick suffered an injury, what we think now is a thumb injury, and had to be carted off the field. He wasn't technically carted off the field. He was walked off the field and he was carted back to the locker room because it is a long way to the locker room. Everyone carts off the field after practice. With Luke Getsy, I understand the frustrations because, they're trying to shuffle these guys in and out on the offensive line. They're trying to get in sync here with their offense. And, these are the days to do it because the pads are going to come on next week. It should be Tuesday, I believe, will be the pad day. And they want their guys out there and they want their guys, in a rhythm and in sync. And you can't do that when you have guys false starting. And he had another quote about this as well. It was later on in the interview. And, to kind of sum it up, it was pretty much coach created really good situations for us. So what we've done situational football, but we've done kind of isolated those situations. Coach did a good job of putting them into the middle of practice, spontaneous, so the guys didn't have a chance to prepare. And those were great reps. And then, he says, you saw that we jumped twice. And those were 2 false starts early in practice during the situational 11-on-11 type stuff. But then, he says it come back a third time and they executed really well. He wants to get over the hump of, making those mistakes. You can't be jumping twice like that and then come back with the third rep and be good. You need the first rep to be good. So, I mean, I understand his frustrations. He did sound like the offense needed to kind of get to a better place. Now, our defense is the better unit right now. I mean, it's plain and simple. The defense is the better unit out there at Hallett's Hall in training camp. Will that be the case with the pads on? I don't know. We'll have to see. But, the offensive struggles and the offense not getting on the same page really can't be attributed to just the defense being the better unit. It's got to be the offense has to be syncing, more in sync than where they are right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't have to take it back to the Matt Nagy days to know that Luke Getsy's kind of saying and doing and tackling the exact opposite of everything that the Bears sucked at over the last couple of years on offense. But what I think sticks out to me regarding Luke Getsy's comments is that there's such an attention to detail, right? Because there's these videos that circulate all over Twitter, I think every single year almost, of so-and-so making a leaping pass or a leaping grab or quarterback's doing great. Like today, I think the one that was circulating was Justin Fields connecting with Cole Kmet and then beating Eddie Jackson. Everyone's kind of getting hype over that, but that's only one rep of, hundreds that are to come over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And so you look at that and you say, the highlight reels that we see all over social media are great, but the reality of the situation is that, the Bears need to play good situational football. They need to go ahead and they got to get this stuff like the false starts under control. And then, you just see, I think, some of the shuffling that exists regarding the offensive line. Like we knew the Bears were going to ease Riley Reeve, Michael Schofield into things, but Braxton Jones is a name that I'm sure you've looked at and have kind of been impressed with, because he's someone that the Bears really seemingly are high on. And then you've got Sam Mustipher working at right guard too. So I think right now for the Bears, just along the offense in general, there's a lot more moving pieces. Whereas I think you compare it to the defense, and I think the advantage that the defense has compared to the offense is that the defense does at least have more veteran leadership that's played at a high level, right? So you're looking at Robert Quinn, obviously, and then you have Eddie Jackson as well. And then you have a couple guys here that are in their first year, but they've kind of been leaders and have played at a high level with other teams, like defensive and Al-Quddin Mohammed. Another name's defensive tackle Justin Jones. So, I think the veteran experience on defense right now is certainly making a major difference. Whereas on paper, if you look at the Bears, I mean, there's really only 3 or 4 players on the offensive side of the ball that were starters last year that are back this year. That's Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney, David Montgomery, and Cody Whitehair. You could argue number 5 is Cole Kmet, but the point is that the offense is such a major work in progress right now because of the rampant turnover.
Yeah, and the thing with Braxton Jones is I don't think he'll be the starting left tackle come week 1. I think they're just kind of slowly easing Riley Reif into it, and that doesn't make sense. But that doesn't mean that Braxton Jones, can't be a legit player in this league. I mean, I've been impressed with him since he kind of took over that number 1 left tackle spot over the final 6 practices of OTAs and mandatory minicamp. And he's kind of got like that, he's a very smart guy, first off, and we've gotten to talk to him. He understands the game, and he knows it's not just, physical strength that's going to get him by. He's been studying, the quote unquote, the whiteboard, the chalkboard, where he needs to know where his assignment is. He needs to know where he has to be on every play, who he's supposed to block, things like that. And he asks a lot of good questions about that. Now, while I don't think he's going to be the starter week 1, I think he's going to be their eventual plan at left tackle. And I think it might benefit him from learning from some veterans. And now that Teven Jenkins we don't know what his situation is. This opens up a door for someone like Braxton Jones to get some more reps here. And yeah, I've been impressed with him. And I think he's a player that to keep an eye on here as training camp goes on. Another thing that kind of stood out to me today, being out there and yesterday as well, were the 2 rookies in Jaquan Brisker, safety, and defensive back Kylie Gordon. And the thing with both of them is, we see Kylie Gordon as DB2 or just a boundary corner. We see Jaquan Brisker as just a strong safety, but they've kind of been all over the place. Brisker's done some work on the outside as a corner in certain packages. Kylie Gordon's played a lot more in the slot than I thought he would. Tavon Young and Thomas Graham are the 2 that are kind of battling out, for the slot. Thomas Graham wasn't there today, but Kylie Gordon, got some of those reps inside, and he talked about it after practice. He says he's comfortable there. He did it at Washington, and he's fine playing the nickel. And he kind of joked, someone asked him, you think you're too big to play the nickel? Because usually slot receivers are smaller, they're quicker, they're faster, and slot corners are kind of the same size. They're not really, bigger corners like you see on the boundary. And he joked, and he's like, no, he doesn't think he's too big. He kind of laughed at it. He enjoys doing it. Now, the Bears asked him to play a little in the slot going into training camp, and he also did it in the offseason OTAs as well. Does that continue, though? I don't know. If someone like Kendall Vilder or Duke Shelley or someone else on the boundary kind of established themselves and Gordon established himself in the slot, I could see that. But I think what's going to happen here is the Bears are going to go with their base package of 2 linebackers, essentially, and a lot more nickel corner than people want to think. I think that the nickel package is used so much more often in these NFL days. You have to have a good nickel. And then, to kind of wrap up this thought, Brisker, we saw him in the box. I saw him come off the edge and get a pressure. He's kind of all over the place. And I think he makes Eddie Jackson play better too. Having that kind of true strong safety is going to help Eddie Jackson here down the line.
Yeah, Brisker, you look at, right? I like to think of him as basically being, like a linebacker that's playing safety because he's just that freakishly fast. He's that physical, He, I think, is someone that we're going to talk about in a couple of years as really being one of the tone setters and leaders of the defense that Poles and Eberflus are eventually building. You look at Kyler Gordon and what I like about Kyler Gordon is that we know he's a phenomenal cornerback, number one. He probably both of these defensive backs, by the way, Gordon and Brisker, would have been first round picks had there not been a run on wide receivers and offensive linemen towards the end of round one in the 2022 NFL draft. But what really matters is this more than anything is that Gordon's just such a phenomenal athlete that kind of the athleticism he brings allows him to move both inside and outside with ease. So you look at that and you say, the Bears picture at cornerbacks a bit complicated here. And it's not complicated because they're trying to figure out just what they want to do best and what works for the team. Because I think, quite frankly, what could work best for the Bears is Jalen Johnson and Gordon on the boundary. And then you just figure out nickel between Teven Young and Thomas Graham Jr. But it's complicated because, if you have Johnson, we know Jalen Johnson's playing on the boundary. Let's just say Kyler Gordon's inside. Then you're kind of faced with the conundrum of who exactly is going to be on the boundary opposite Jalen Johnson. And Kendall Vildor showed last year that he should not be playing there. Duke Shelley's had his opportunities over the last couple of years, but he's never really been anything that you could consider being a starting caliber corner. And so then, Thomas Graham Jr. again did impress there. And, Graham Jr. spending a couple weeks this offseason training with Jalen Johnson, I think really goes a long way towards him having an opportunity to really make a name for himself. You look at Teven Young, who the last 3 seasons dealt with, I believe it was neck injuries and then had 2 torn ACLs in back-to-back years on opposite knees. So a change of scenery certainly benefits Teven Young as well, who's just 28 years old, by the way. So there's, I think, a lot of potential here for this cornerback room and just his secondary in general to quickly become one of the best in the NFL.
Well, the thing about Teven Young is when he's healthy, he's a good slot corner, and he's shown that. The problem is he just can't stay healthy, and that's why he's not with Baltimore anymore. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be the way I see Kyler Gordon playing the slot this year on a consistent basis is if someone else steps up on the outside opposite of Jalen Johnson. If they don't have anyone and they're struggling out there, it's going to be Kyler Gordon. But, I mean, we're going to see packages, a lot more nickel, a lot more dime now in this 4-3 defense, with the extra defensive backs out there. And that's just kind of how the NFL is trying to go right now. I mean, all the offenses are air attack offenses. They want to throw the football with a nice, run game. So when looking at what Matt Eberflus wants to do, I can see it. I mean, I can see Kyler Gordon in the slot in some situations. I don't think he'll be the full-time starter or solution there, just because, so far, Kendall Vildor and Duke Shelley and guys like that really haven't stepped up. Now, Lamar Jackson had a great day today. He was one of my standouts with a PBU and an interception, but that's not enough to warrant him being the number one starter. So, yeah, we'll have to see. And plus, Young or Graham are going to have to come in and win this nickel job too and show. And I think the Bears secondary could be a strength this year. And it's kind of a position that people are not really paying attention to as a strength. I think Jaquan Brisker complements Eddie Jackson better than HaHa Clinton Dix did or Tashawn Gibson ever did. And he's kind of just like not a better, I want to say, he's kind of like an Adrian Amos type at strong safety. And I think, we could be talking about him potentially being a Pro Bowl player back there along with Eddie Jackson. I think that opens up a lot of things for this Bears secondary.
It certainly does. And it's amazing how last offseason the secondary was kind of one of the weaknesses and question marks because the Bears only had 2 legit DBs in Johnson and Jackson. This year, it's honestly one of the strengths of the entire roster and something that is going to be a strength throughout the 2022 season. But before we get out of here, Zach, the Bears have 2 more practices scheduled for this week. I believe it's Friday as well as Saturday. Give me one thing you're watching for between both of those practices, or just something on Friday, something on Saturday.
I mean, the obvious thing is going to be Teven Jenkins' situation, but that's kind of too easy to say. So, I mean, I guess, for tomorrow's practice, I'm kind of looking again at the wide receivers, which one can kind of break out. Outside Darnell Mooney, it hasn't been great. Like, we saw some clips of the one-on-ones. Byron Pringle made a good catch. Daz Newsome made a good catch. And then there's another wide receiver that had one. I can't think of the name right now. It was Velus Jones that had a good route and a good catch on Kyler Gordon. But other than that, N'Keal Harry kind of struggled in his second practice here with the Bears. So I'm going to look at which wide receiver can kind of step up, because I still think it's wide open. I think it's Mooney, and then I think after that it's going to be Pringle and Velas are roster locks. I don't know which one will be the number 2 and number 3, and then I think N'Keal Harry's probably going to make it, but they might have 2 more spots. And so far, no one has really stepped up for those 2 spots. Could come down to special teams. Then like Saturday, I'll give you another one. I'm going to be looking at the offensive line combinations again, what they do. Will Michael Schofield finally get those full first-team reps at right guard, because it's been Sam Mustipher? I don't think the Lucas Patrick injury is serious. It sounds like he might miss a practice tomorrow or maybe another one on this weekend. If it is serious, who's going to be the center? Do they move Sam Mustipher back there? Do they give Doug Kramer all the reps? Does Schofield, then slot in at right guard full-time as well? There's a lot of moving pieces. If Teven Jenkins is back, will he go to right guard? Will he get a shot at right guard? So, yeah, obviously the Teven Jenkins situation, I'd look at wide receiver, and I'm going to look at offensive line again.
Yeah, for me on Friday, as I will be at camp tomorrow, the one thing I'm looking for is just how exactly do some of these defensive linemen play, right? Because that's a positional group that you look at this offseason, and there was so much turnover on the defense in general, but more specifically the front seven. It's out with Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Bilal Nichols, kind of in with Justin Jones, Quadeen Muhammad. Dominique Robinson is a player that I'm really intrigued by, simply because he's relatively new to playing defensive end, but ultimately he's just so raw and has so many tools and traits, as well as the athleticism needed to kind of develop into a solid pass rusher. And then for Saturday, I'm going to take a bit of a different approach here. The running backs really have not gotten a lot of love through the first couple days of training camp so far. We know what David Montgomery is. He could easily have 2,000 yards from scrimmage if the offensive line can put it together this season. Khalil Herbert burst onto the scene last year, a really hard, smart, instinctive runner. But specifically, I'm looking at running back depth, right? I want to see what 7th round pick Treston Ebner can do this season, because he's a player that you look at, and I think he's drawn comparisons to guys like Tony Pollard being a Swiss Army knife. He's kind of played all over the field in high school, settled down and played returner and running back throughout his time at Baylor. And now kind of with the Bears, I think the Bears don't have a running back 3, but I would not be surprised to see a guy like Ebner fill that role, because he's a hard runner, but I also think he's got, really good hands as well. So you're looking at someone that could easily develop into a solid weapon and contributor for the offense. Anyways,
All
so
right, I was stuck on mute there. I'm sorry.
You're good. Go ahead.
And I noted Ebner. In my notebook today, he was quick. He got some reps there as a third string. So, running back is a position to watch, and I think that's going to be more of. It's more of when the pads come on, because it's really hard in those trenches to kind of judge a lot of these guys. When the pads come on, it'll be a little easier to judge.
All right. Anyways, guys, so before we get out of here, make sure you're following myself and Zach on Twitter. That's at Usayd Koshul, at Zach_Pearson. That's ZACK_Pearson. Check out Bear Report on Facebook at Bear Report Scout, on Twitter at Bear Report. Check out our NFL Draft and College Football podcast at Picks for Polls. Make sure you are going to the main website. We put the link in the description of this video. Check out everything that we've got going on, bringing you coverage from Hallis Hall every single day throughout training camp as well as the season. And make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as thumbs up on this video. We're going to see you guys next time, probably sometime next week, to kind of recap more training camp. But until then, bear down and peace out.